welcome back to another episode of, what are we calling this, babe? MorrisChats.
MorrisChats.
Sorry, we've been gone for a little bit, but we kind of didn't know what we wanted to do with this little blog, and now we know. So we're back with another little review. I'm Liz Morris, and I'm here with my lovely husband, Eugene. Say hi, Eugene.
Hey, everybody.
You may know him from the Brotherhood of Gaming. Check them out if you can. So today we're here for a little review of a movie that we just went and watched.
And what movie is that?
We watched Godzilla Minus One.
Godzilla Minus One, the newest movie from Toho, the original creators of Godzilla.
Yes, so my husband in particular was very excited for this movie. He's been looking forward to this for a while now, so we, of course, caught it on opening day. We watched it at our local movie theater, nice big screen, great seats, not a sold-out theater, but still. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, a little bit about Godzilla himself, and see what else we get into, okay? Ready, hun?
I am ready.
So before we get into anything, thank you again for listening, and thanks for coming back if you've been away. We're going to talk a little bit quick about what the movie's about. Godzilla Minus One takes place in the mid-1940s in Japan. A young kamikaze pilot named Shikishima is riddled in guilt for not dying during the war. Meanwhile, a mysterious sea creature named Godzilla makes landfall on a recovering Tokyo, forcing citizens to come together to try and defeat the beast. Does that sound about right, bub?
That sounds perfect.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you and your love of Godzilla. So let's start with how you started liking Godzilla, honey.
I have been a Godzilla fan since I was a little kid. And the thing about it, honey, is I've been a Godzilla fan...
Excuse me.
Sorry. I've been a Godzilla fan so long that I don't really remember how I got into Godzilla. Mm-hmm. It just, Godzilla's always been there. I was a Godzilla fan throughout the 90s, which was not easy because whenever you wanted to see Godzilla films, you just have to go on Friday to the local video VHS store and hope there's one available to rent for the weekend.
See, VHS's, kids, used to be how you watched movies back in the day. There weren't DVDs and you couldn't stream everything forever.
Back in the caveman times.
Back in the Blockbuster days.
Oh, Blockbuster. Also, another way was to catch them on TV. Now, on TNT, they would have these monster visions or monster movie marathons on the weekends, on Saturdays. And every once in a while, you'd be lucky enough to catch a Godzilla one. And I remember taping a lot of Godzilla films off that one. Saw the 98 film. Liked it at the time, then realized later how disappointing it was. But then with the advent of DVDs, a lot of Godzilla movies started to come over here. And I've just been a fan ever since. I'm a fan of Godzilla in pretty much all of his forms. Godzilla as a character works so well because you can literally tell any kind of story you can with him. He could be a hero, he could be the villain, he could be the anti-hero, he could be like a misfit. So he's just very, very creative. Now, Godzilla is always, and correct me if you've always felt this way, Godzilla's always kind of had kind of a stigma where people look at him and it's like, oh, these movies are so ridiculous. These movies are so silly. Mm-hmm. You know, with a guy in the rubber costumes and the dubbing and, you know, why do the words match the mouths and all that?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've always been a fan. I love all the new stuff with the MonsterVerse that's going on. And the fact that Toho came out with a new Godzilla movie is really awesome because they don't make as many Godzilla films as they used to. So it really feels like more of an event.
When was the last time a Toho movie came to America?
The last one they made one, live action one, was Shin Godzilla from 2016.
Okay, so it's been
7 years.
7 years.
And next year is going to be the 70-year anniversary of when the first Gojira came out. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a big deal. That's why it's like if you're a Godzilla fan, you're eating good right now because there's a whole bunch of Godzilla content.
Lots of Godzilla stuff coming out right now.
Yeah.
So, hun, do you have a favorite Godzilla movie? of all 30 whatevers since 1954, which one would you say is the one that you could watch over and over and over again? Although I know you can watch all of them, but which is the one that is just on repeat for you?
I would say Godzilla vs. Biollante from 1989. It's just such a crazy and very creative film. It was a film that actually Toho held a contest to see who would come up with an idea for a Godzilla film. And like this one, I guess the one who submitted was like a doctor. Mm-hmm. That's why they kind of goes into this. If you watch the movie, you'll understand. But that's my favorite. But like I said, I've pretty much, if there's a Godzilla movie, I like it. Yeah. Basically. Well, almost. I mean, there's one, but yeah.
And so just in my experience watching the Godzillas that I've seen, they all seem to look a little different. Do you have a favorite look of Godzilla? Because 1989 Godzilla looks different from 1954 and so on. So which one do you think looks the most Godzilla to you? Like, which is Godzilla to you?
I would say when I think of Godzilla, probably the one I'm most nostalgic for is the Godzilla from 1984. I have a shirt of that, The Return of Godzilla, because I remember just seeing that when I was a kid, and so that kind of was like, oh, this is so cool. It's like it's a Godzilla film with like newer effects and stuff. This is so cool. So I would say that.
He's the look you like the most? Like,
I'd say
and
so.
Why do you think that? Like,
just how menacing he looks.
Oh, okay.
You know, he kind of had to, they kind of give him more of a brow to make him look like he was always angry. Mm-hmm. He had kind of like these teeth sticking out, which made him look like more like fangs. And he just had a great look. Yes, but that's just one of so many. Like I enjoy the original look from 1954, how charred and how he looked at the gray. I like the King of the Monsters, the new MonsterVerse version. I think he looks great in these new ones.
I agree. I like that one too.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Do you have a favorite Godzilla villain? Like a favorite villain or a favorite counterpart that Godzilla kind of acts alongside from a movie? And I say villain, you know what I mean, like a co-star, I should say.
King Ghidorah.
Because they're not all villains, right?
King Ghidorah. The three-headed dragon with the space dragon with the wings and the two tails. That's
he looks pretty cool.
That's his like number one. That's like Batman to Joker. That's like his number one villain. Superman, Lex Luthor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so back to our subject. Is there anything else you wanted to say about your history?
I think I pretty much got it.
All right, cool. So back to our topic at hand. We watched Godzilla Minus One today in theaters, and we just want to talk a little bit about it. So, and Eugene had to tell me this because I didn't know. Godzilla Minus One refers to the fact that, like we said earlier in the description, this movie takes place after World War II. Mm-hmm. And after World War II, Japan was at zero. And then a couple years later, Godzilla shows up and Japan quickly becomes -1. So they become less than what they were after World War II.
Right.
And this movie, just to start, I think does a great job of describing that.
Now, before we continue on, I just wanted to give a little house cleaning note. There will be some spoilers in this, so we do recommend that you do see the film first before you watch this podcast. Just so
or don't, and just go in with spoilers. I mean, it's a Godzilla movie. It's cool. You know what's going to happen, pretty much. We went and watched this this film because we've been looking forward to this. So where am I at? Oh yeah. So Japan is at -1 because this creature Godzilla has come about. Now this to me felt kind of like a prequel, like an intro to Godzilla. Is this kind of what it is to you? The Japanese people have heard of this Godzilla before, but they've not heard of Godzilla before.
It's more of a different take on the origin story because this is kind of an interesting review because we have a Godzilla super fan.
Mega fan.
And kind of a novice.
Very novice.
Very novice.
Not kind of. Very much.
This film has a lot of callbacks to films from the original series.
Okay.
And like I also explained to my wife earlier, like, the entire pantheon of Godzilla films, you can't think of it like it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's just one hard line. There's been multiple versions of Godzilla. There's been different timelines. So this one is kind of just an alternate take of the original, and it's a period piece, which is something very unique for Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
You know, usually they're in the now. Usually they're in the nowadays or slightly in the future. So it's kind of cool to have one that's like from back then.
Right. So as we mentioned, our main character in this movie, his name is Shikishima. He has a first name, but I don't think I know how to say it. Shikishima, he's a kamikaze pilot who comes back from war, and in the Japanese culture, that's like bad. So he's kind of like he's looked at almost as like a deserter.
Well, his job as a kamikaze pilot is to die.
But he comes back, and they talk about that in the movie too, and why and when, and all that. That comes out in the movie.
Essentially, he's a coward. Basically,
correct. He chickens out. He makes up a reason why he has to come back. And pretty much, guys, you meet Godzilla right off the bat.
Yes.
This movie comes out swinging. There's no, opening credit title sequence. I don't know if they're all like that, but there's not really a, we're going to run through. No, it's just Toho Studios presents, here's the movie.
Right.
Which was really, really cool. Right off the bat, you start to get a feel for what the movie's going to be like. So
he lands on Odo Island.
Okay.
And that's a reference to the original film. There's all these mechanics there. There's a group of mechanics there, and their job is to fix kamikaze planes. And they kind of they look at his plane, it's like, hey, wait a minute, there's nothing really wrong with this. And that's when he kind of scurries off. That's when they realize, oh, this guy's a... And then later that night, that's when the first attack happens, and you see Godzilla in his dinosaur form. So it's like there's multiple different continuities, but this is also for reference from another film where he was originally a dinosaur who was kind of in suspended animation for a long time, but then he's awakened, and now he's kind of... This is like before he really gets radiated by the nuclear blast. And that sequence, what'd you think of that sequence?
That opening? Yeah. I thought it was really, really cool. You can see right off the, from that opening sequence, that opening attack sequence, that Toho in particular wasn't going to mess around with, what they were going to let you see. And it's not so much that it was, gory and there were blood and guts everywhere. But they definitely weren't afraid to, for example, show Godzilla stepping on people.
Yes.
And biting people. They were not afraid to let any of that be on film, which was cool because, that would happen. So
it's very rare in a Godzilla film when you see actual human casualties.
Correct.
It's always been kind of implied because he's walking through buildings and stuff. But they're the movies where they actually show humans getting really jacked up is always kind of
yeah. So the opening sequence, the opening scene was clever. And then we move on into
Tokyo.
Here's a spoiler right off the bat. Shikishima makes it through. That's a whole thing too. He makes it to Tokyo. He meets some people. Basically, Shikishima now has a reason to kind of want to live, right? Yeah,
in a sense. He does. Well, he lives, but he's very... At the first, he's really shunned.
Correct.
Because everyone's like, hey, why are you alive?
Why are you back? My kids didn't come back. Why are you back?
It's the end of World War II. And one thing I did notice about this, too, is that there was never any direct reference to...
the war.
Not that the Hiroshima bombs and the Nagasaki bombs.
Yeah, no.
But you see Japan, Tokyo, after the air raids, and it's just smashed.
It's shambles. People are living in shacks.
his next door neighbor is just disgusted with him.
Right.
You know, his parents are gone. He's like, he's got nothing.
Yeah.
And then he runs into this young woman who's running away. It was a cool sequence where he's running. You hear thief, thief, thief in the background. You think, oh, maybe she like stole some bread or something. She like gives this bundle to him, and then she runs off. And then he looks and he realizes it's a baby.
Yep. And then later on, they meet back up again, and come to find out the baby's not hers either.
Right.
But the baby's parents were killed, and basically she
just took him in because
took on care for this little girl, because who's gonna let a baby die, right?
It's just the human part of it.
Human nature, yeah.
So we basically have these like three misfits kind of living together.
They live together. There's a timeline, you know. It's
time
it's like
jumps.
a 2-year later thing.
Japan starts to slowly get back on its feet.
Things happen in between.
He gets a job destroying mines.
Mine's in the ocean.
That's where we meet his crew.
Yeah, we meet his friends. He makes these new friends, his crew.
An elderly captain. We have like a kind of a scientist, technical looking guy.
And then a really young kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, typical
Right.
for that stuff. He's because he's a kamikaze pilot, he's basically a sharpshooter.
Yes.
Right? Like he's really good. Oh yeah, that makes a part in the opening sequence too, but you guys can catch up. Yeah, he's a sharpshooter. So he kind of is the best one at like shooting these mines, because what they do is they bring them back up to the ocean surface and then they shoot them to destroy them.
Because we're trying to get rid of all the war stuff now to make it
Correct.
safe. You know, Japan had basically just kind of bunkered themselves in from the rest of the world.
And basically, they shot one mine too many, right? And it kind of woke somebody up.
Or at least, yeah. Well, what happened is that, okay. So the Bikini Atoll happens, where they do the test of the hydrogen bomb. That's also very connected in the Godzilla. They did a version of that in the Monarch show.
Say it again.
Bikini Atoll.
Okay.
The islands where the Americans tested the hydrogen bomb. That's very connected to Godzilla mythos. So this dinosaur Godzilla gets radiated, and he gets supercharged and super big, and he starts attacking. He attacks one of these vessels, which is an American vessel. And right now the Americans are kind of tied up with tensions with the Soviets. So Japan's kind of on its own right now.
Yeah.
And that's when they've had their first run-in with Big Godzilla. Yeah. And
I just want to say, again, as the novice of the podcast here, I told Eugene when the movie was over, it was impressive to me how big they made Godzilla look in this movie. Just with like their shots and comparative shots to Godzilla and like the ocean even. Godzilla and the land behind him. Godzilla and boats. They really did a great job at making him look huge compared to other movies. When we watched what was the last Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong was great, and I thought that movie was really cool, but I feel that in this movie Godzilla is bigger than that Godzilla, which I thought was super impressive. The CGI is great there, but the CGI is really cool, but they do a great job at making Godzilla look huge. So that's just the moviegoer in me that was really impressed with that part. So
very detailed.
You see every little, like, everything on God. He's very detailed. His scales, like every little lump and bump, very, very detailed. His eyes. Very, very cool. Very impressive.
This is very much evil Godzilla.
Yes.
Or Destroyer Godzilla.
Correct.
When he walks, he kind of looks like a zombie in a way. Like this emotionless, just destroying machine.
A very stoic Godzilla.
Right.
Like he don't give a crap.
His powers are very cool.
Very cool.
Godzilla's always indestructible, and he's He basically he basically in this film, which again is taken from mythology, he kind of has a Wolverine healing factor, where he gets really jacked up and then he heals heals almost instantaneously. Like half his face gets blown off and then you just see it comes back together.
That is impressive too. That was really cool.
Probably the most destructive version of his atomic breath.
Yes, because you see, I mean, because in the past we've seen his atomic breath. And it's like, oh, cool, you know, like, yeah, he kind of like blows up his.
It's kind of like a ray beam.
Yeah, he like blows up his opponent. In this movie, his atomic breath causes an atomic reaction.
Yeah.
A mushroom cloud.
Right.
Atomic blast. Yeah, which I mean, if you're gonna talk atomic, and I mean, unfortunately, the Japanese at that time were kind of used to what that felt like. So, yeah, this is the most destructive of the what's it called, the heat ray breath?
Yeah, the heat ray
or the atomic
beam. You know,
also,
like
when he gets charged up,
yes,
his scales popping out blue.
Yeah,
very, very cool. I'm telling you, the detail was the CGI is super
well, I
impressive.
told you that the guy who directed and wrote this film is also the head visual effects supervisor, which is it was very rare.
Which is evident.
Right.
I mean, you can tell this guy had his hand in every part of it because, yeah, it was very, very cool. God, if you're gonna watch this movie, watch it for nothing else other than that Godzilla looks great.
So Godzilla eventually makes his way to Japan. He's caused more destruction. What's the main character's name again?
Shikishima.
Shikishima, yeah. He doesn't get married to the woman he's with because
whose name I forgot.
He has a lot of post traumatic syndrome to go through.
Very PT. It's Shikishima is an emotional character.
Yes.
He kind of goes through a roller coaster of emotions here, which I think brings the human aspect of this movie out a lot more, and very well done as well.
The thing about Godzilla films is that for the longest time, human characters are just kind of there to kind of put the story, drag the story along.
Yeah.
You kind of tolerate the human characters, but you're just kind of waiting for Godzilla to show up. This is one of those Godzilla films where I actually really cared about the human characters.
Yes.
They have a really good lead character because he's very different. He's a coward. You know, he wants to live. He's riddled with guilt. He wants. Like there's a part of him that wants to move on, but he's kind of being held back. He keeps everyone at arm's length. So you end up really caring about the human aspect of this film. In the last film, Shin Godzilla, which had a lot of human characters, they were talking about a lot of different issues, but I didn't really care too much about the characters themselves. They were just there to fill a role. Another thing about Toho films nowadays is that a lot of them are tend to deal with like issues, modern day issues, which is a callback to the 54 one. Like, Shin Godzilla 2016 was kind of a commentary on how incompetent the Japanese government was during that earthquake in 2011, I think it was, that caused that
nuclear spill.
Yeah. So everyone was like, so all the characters were like members of the government.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of a commentary on that. This one, though, was really more of a human story.
Yeah.
And if there was a theme to this film, it's like choosing life over death. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. It's a very, the human aspect in this movie is it's sweet. The story is very sweet. The baby is super cute. And I think, between the little baby and then this girl whose name I wish I knew right now, Shikishima kind of is given another chance at life, which he couldn't figure out why at the time. And his friends, his little crew of homies, keep reminding him, like, oh, you know, you really need to just marry this girl already, because they pretty much just
you
live
guys
anyway.
live together. And
They live together anyway, and they have been
basically
for
have a kid,
years. They have been for years. They're raising this little girl together, and he's the entire movie has said no because he's not past it. In his mind, he's a failure, and it's not over in his head yet.
He's kind of a self-loathing character.
Yeah,
like, I think there's like a part of him also feels like he doesn't deserve happiness.
Yeah,
yeah, even though like because he has all this burdens that he's trying to hold. He has
this burden of being this pilot whose job it is to die. He did not because he didn't want to. Because who really wants to at the end of the day, you know? But he's it's been bottled up. Like, he's never really told anyone. Only, like, his neighbor lady really knew. This girl that he met, he didn't tell for several years. He didn't tell his friends for several years. Like, no one really knew. So he kind of had that bottled up. He finally lets it out, and I think realizes that, you know, that was what he needed to do, was just to come clean with himself. Mm-hmm. And to be real with himself about the fact that it's okay to want to live your life, you know?
Learning to move on from past mistakes or regrets. And like I said, the theme of this film to me is really choosing life over death.
Correct. Yeah.
You know? And letting go of your anger, letting go of your hatred, letting go of your sadness.
Correct. Yeah. And
I mean, were you surprised by that you can get kind of feelings like that in a Godzilla movie?
I was a little bit. Yeah. I was. Yeah. I was very much. I mean, at one point, I think towards the end of the movie, the part where he breaks down.
Yeah.
Because of what happens to his female friend.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost broke down with him. You know, it was so believable and so real. The actor was really, really good.
He was great.
He was great. Very believable.
You brought this up, too, and I also wanted to mention this as well. I thought it was a very good idea that they kept it subtitled.
Correct. So this movie is in Japanese with English subtitles, which usually for me is annoying, but I feel in this movie it was extremely appropriate.
Right.
Because I think the dubbing would have been very distracting.
Yes.
Because dubbing is never perfect. It's never really.
It's more of convenience.
Never really good.
It's more convenience.
Yeah. But keeping it as a subtitled movie was the right choice, and yeah, I didn't feel like I wasn't catching up with the subtitles at all.
Right, you were kind of worried about that too.
I was kind of worried that I wouldn't be able to read fast enough. But yeah, it was very much less distracting than trying to like pick out how awful the dubs were, which is what people typically do in Godzilla movies. Right. So, typically, the dubbing in Godzilla movies, I mean, that's been made fun of for years, right? The dubbing in Godzilla movies. So, but yeah, it is subtitled. So also know that. I guess we could have said that at the beginning, but know that too.
But it works because it allows you to feel the emotion of the Japanese actors who are doing these performances in their native language. It hits more. It hits differently.
Right. So where are we now with going over the movie?
That's basically it. Yeah, the destruction happens. They come up with a plan to stop them. It's not the governments that are trying to, it's not the governments have to save the day. The governments are kind of out of the picture. So it's the people of Japan.
Right.
The people of Japan themselves who are rising up to try to stop this threat.
Former soldiers who made it back from war.
Right.
Who are like, what? No, I just got out of war. Like, I ain't doing this again. Who step up to protect their country again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of governments who started the war, now you have this new destruction force coming, and these soldiers or they all band together to, like you said, save their homeland.
Yep.
Probably the best human story I've ever seen in a Godzilla film, at least when it comes to pure emotions. and actually caring. It's not one of those things where, and I know a lot of people complained about this with the Legendary films. It's not a film where you're watching the human characters and you're just counting down the minutes till Godzilla shows up again.
Yeah.
You're actually invested in what's going on.
Yeah, the story. I'm telling you, the in-between story is really, really nice.
Now, there's still plenty of Godzilla in this film, and you see all the destruction, and it's all great, and it's all like, wow. You see Godzilla in the sea fighting a battleship. You see Godzilla stomping through Tokyo. Godzilla looks great I love how they showed battle damage on him.
Yeah.
He looked very scary and evil. Yet, ironically, there were some moments in the film where he just looked kind of cute.
Kind of feel bad for him, you know? Like, what are you guys doing? Kind of feel bad for him when he's floating around in the water, just, you know, floating.
Just floating around.
Yeah, he looks great.
I never thought, this is the first time I've ever actually seen a Toho Godzilla film in the theater.
Yes, your face said it all.
Yes. They used the classic roar from the 1954 film.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, we didn't even get into the music.
The music was subtle, it was dark, it was unsettling, and it fit perfectly.
Yes, I agree. The soundtrack to this is great. The
new stuff. They also brought in a lot of the old cues.
What are we gonna call it? The Godzilla theme? The
Godzilla theme, yeah.
The Godzilla
march.
score.
The Godzilla march.
The Godzilla march.
Yeah.
Makes its way into the movie.
At the right time.
At the right time, you just know some shit's about to go down.
Yes.
Like when you start to hear the crescendo of the.
You're right.
It was really good. I mean, even me as like, you know,
it's
wife,
such a recognizable
even me as the wife, I kind of got chills when I started to hear it. I was like, oh boy. Then I look over at my husband who's just smiling from ear to ear because he knows what's about to happen too. So
yes.
So yeah.
Like I said, is this now my favorite? It's so hard to say, but it's definitely it's up there. It's one of those Godzilla films that I've always loved to see, and it kind of shows that I think now, speaking as a Godzilla fan, who's been a Godzilla fan for almost my whole life, we've always been kind of fighting this battle for Godzilla to get respect from the general public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people look at, Godzilla films, they say you're a fan of Godzilla films, and they just kind of laugh, how silly it is. I like to think that now people are starting to, because now people are starting to get more into, geeky things like, comic book movies and things like that. They can go to something like this and see the merit in it.
Yeah.
That you can tell a very compelling story, which is what they did in the first one, 1954. But as the years went on, they started catering more toward kids because, kids like monsters and, that became the base audience.
Yeah.
And all that's fun. All that's great. The superhero stuff is great. See Godzilla, punch a guy in the face. But it's also nice to every once in a while have a film like this to show you that you can tell some very great stories, some serious stories. But then again, it's a very human story. It's a very relatable story. It's not a story that's like jam packed with like politics or anything like that, or it's very much there's this creature who's this destroyer, and then you have the human beings and what they're trying to do to survive this.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
The themes were great. The film looked wonderful. It's a little different to see a Toho film that's now. Well, the Godzilla is just completely CGI. Although he was the last one too, but the CGI is now caught up where it can be very, it reminds you of, it could feel like a guy in a suit.
Yep.
But it's just better, just so much more detailed.
The CGI is incredibly impressive.
It's taking it to the next step, but also paying homage to what came before it.
Correct.
So as a Godzilla fan, I loved it. Now, the question is, could you take a non-Godzilla fan or a Godzilla novice to it, and would they enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much. Like I've been saying, it was very, very nice. If if the Godzilla and the destruction part are not your cup of tea, the story behind everything will definitely get you. It's got its tearjerker moments, you know. I enjoyed it very much. Actually, when we left, I was kind of thinking that I could very much watch that again.
Yes. You can watch it without getting bored or just like, oh my god, or
correct,
you know,
correct.
you're actually you're enthralled into the story.
It was quite enjoyable. It kind of made me think like, oh, if I was brand new to Godzilla, I would very much be thinking like, oh man, are they all like this? Like, have I been missing out? We know they are not, but yeah, it very much compared to the Godzilla movie, even the more recent Godzilla movies, versus Kong or King of the Monsters, which are great as far as Godzilla is concerned, are good.
Those are like I call those like summer blockbuster Godzilla,
correct. Where
it's Godzilla's. He might as well be wearing a red cape and a big S on his chest, and he's out saving the day.
But I mean,
which are fun.
But
and then you have films like this.
But those movies, the in between story that like your wife or your girlfriend might enjoy was not there for me in those movies. In this one, yes, there is a story that's being told, and it's cohesive. Like, from start to finish, you follow this character from the beginning, this young, very poor, beat-up kid from war, and you see him succeed, and you see kind of life going up, and then you see it take its downs, and all the turn. It's a really, really great story. And I'd love to see more of Shikishima.
Yeah.
If there is another part to this story, I'd love to see how
-2.
That minus. I'd love to see how it continues, because it's a really, really sweet story. So yes,
American Godzilla movies are fun, but Japanese Godzilla films, they hit a little different.
They kick ass a little harder for sure. All right, so
I recommend.
Eugene, out of 5 Godzilla footprints, how many footprints are you going to give this movie?
6.
6 Godzilla footprints in the ground from Eugene, the master Godzilla man. Is there anything else that you need our listening public to know about Godzilla Minus One?
You'll have a good time with it. See it while it's in theaters. See it in theaters.
See it in a big, big screen. If you can catch it in IMAX, it might be even better. We did not catch it in IMAX.
Because the times were just like crazy.
Because the times were ridiculous. But maybe if we watch it again, we'll try to get an IMAX view.
There you go.
Yeah. There were kids in there too, and there were families in there.
It's scary, but it's not like it's gory.
It's cool scary.
Yeah, it's cool scary. Yeah.
So anyways, from the mouth of Eugene Morris, a 6 out of 5. Take your family, take your friends. You'll enjoy it. And, I did, for sure. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for bringing us back. Like and subscribe our channel. We'll try to be more frequent with our posts. And, that's it. Go enjoy Godzilla Minus One. Give us a roar, Eugene. Bye.
Bye.